hello, if it's Thursday at 1 o'clock Central Time, you know it's Think Tank Thursday. And I couldn't be more excited. My dear friend, coach, partner in crime, maybe. Linda, Linda Norman. Gosh, I've known Linda since 2008. I joined Vistage, and Linda was a member. And one of her primary goals she achieved in my Vistage tenure, and that was to get the heck out of her business so she could start a new one. Oh my gosh, Linda helps. Linda helps our company. She's our coach. Those of you that know me know that we don't teach anything that we don't do. And Linda heads up our current CEO group. We're CEO Brain Trust, and she coaches many companies. We all kind of discovered EOS way back in 2014, I think.
Yeah.
Everything seems like it's been about 100 years ago, since we've had 5 years in the last 6 months, right? And oh man, this important woman in my life, and I'm super happy for her to come get in the tank with me. So, hello, Linda. Tell them who you are more than that, because you do all kinds of wonderful things in the world.
I am super excited to be here, and the feelings are all mutual. It's an honor to work with your company and see how far you've taken it since I first met you when you joined Vistage. Your team is incredible, and it's just evolved so much. And then on top of that, just having the friendship and having
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to be friends with you. So
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Well, and Linda's a wonderful animal advocate.
as you can hear by the dog barking in the background, so my apologies for
Her
that.
secretaries, dogs or cats, may have some input here.
Yeah.
Linda, how many companies are you working with currently? Even during this crazy pandemic, have you managed you've managed? Oh, I know you've added clients, and I don't know that you've lost any clients, have you?
Oh, I've been really fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm working with 10 clients right now actively. At the beginning of this year, I took a big leap of faith because I knew a lot of people were being impacted negatively. And it was, if you can pay, great. If you can't, my goal is your business succeeds. And I've been really lucky that only one of my clients is still struggling to get past actually being able to pay. So I
Wow.
think that speaks to not my involvement in it, but the power of keeping your team focused and
Yes.
regrouping and that 90-day cycle of just,
Oh,
okay, here's where we're at. We got a lot of new stuff we could not have ever planned for.
right.
Now, what do we do? And I really think that that's made the world of difference for every single client that I work with is just that regroup, recharge. How are we going to get through the next 90 days? Take a breath of air and then move on to the next thing. I think it's been really impactful.
It's been wild, because you can't. We've seen some clients who said, "Well, we can't do anything," and then kind of paused. Except it's crazy how it's almost like exercise, right? It takes you weeks and weeks and weeks to quit being sore and to begin to really make real progress, traction, if you will. And then about a minute, you miss the gym. I think going to church is the same way. Like you miss one time, it's really easy to not go again. So, well, I really appreciate you were so thoughtful. I mean, the thing about Think Tank is it's almost like a clarity break, just that minute to stop and say, okay, instead of doing or worrying or whatever it is we do, what's the most important thing to think about? And oh my gosh, you sent me every single topic. We need to do 4 weeks of Think Tank, but a couple of things that really stood out to me were you want to talk about simplicity, and you want to talk about trust. And so I just you know listen, those of you that are listening, this woman is brilliant. So just watch her. Just watch what she has to say. When it comes to simplicity, talk to me about what you're thinking.
You know, EOS talks about that and a very simple, clear communication. Don't add a lot of complexity. Less is more. I mean, they talk about those things all the time, but it really resonated with me, not only in the simplicity concept, but also clear communication. I was doing a session last week, and some things seem so simple in our minds
Yeah.
because when we're trying to explain them, we already understand it.
Yes. And we've been thinking about it a long time.
Exactly. And we've stewed it over. And so those two sentences that we throw out should mean that everyone is crystal clear on it and we never have to repeat it. And it gets frustrating. Like, why don't you get this? Come on. And
It's like we brought them in on the middle of a conversation and anticipated that they could be just as enthusiastic. Yes.
Yeah. And so I actually, I was really lucky that my group that I was working with said, could you explain that a different way? Because most of our team will not ever step up and go, wait, that doesn't make sense. I'll nod their head. They don't want to be the one to raise their hand, or they just want to get out of the meeting and move on. And so I was really lucky they stopped. And then I tried it again. And I tried to do it the exact same way. Well, that didn't work because it didn't work the first time. So,
it's like if you don't speak somebody's language, then you just speak a little louder.
That's the thing. So it just was great aha that yes, like the tools we teach are simple and those concepts are simple, but being incredibly clear and communicating them simply so that it's let's take this piece. This is a foundational piece. I'm going to say it. This is A. Now we're going to move on to the next step in the alphabet. This is B. Now, A sounds like this and B sounds like this. And I just had this really great aha that start here and don't go past D, because once you get to D, everyone always talks about keep it to 3. And I know sometimes that's really hard to do, but boy, 4 starts to get the eyes glazed over a little bit. You just get that sense that you lost them. And so I just have it stuck with me so much. Number one, in communication, where I think we're so desperate in need of it right now because of the isolation, the virtual communication, not having that continual personal interaction when we walk by each other in the hallways.
Yep.
So the simple, clear, and effective communication, but also simplicity in your business, because people are, if you were talking about either they can't do anything and now that maybe they're reopening, they're in a state of panic and they're trying to overdo, and that just makes it 10 times harder, especially when we've never worked in this environment. And so I was thinking through the way that I work with people, and I've been really diligent in trying to notice when I go to 5 points or go through 4 to 6 topics of conversation and stop at 1, because if the first part is not clear, whether it's a process, whether it's how you're communicating with your clients, it's the next step in a rock that you need to do, if that first part isn't clear, nothing else is going to work. And it's really hit me. Just I've had so many times where I have to keep going back and explaining 1, 2, or 3 times before I can really move on to the next step. So simple really has been a topic, I think, for a lot of people, but it's resonated with me how difficult it is right now and how important it is for business owners, leaders, managers to focus on keeping things as simple as possible, whether communication, your reopening processes, or your grand opening processes. I know you and I talked about everyone should be doing a re-grand opening.
Yes.
So keep those simple so that they are effective.
Yeah, it makes me think of 2 things. So I in all this process, I've read the Lean Startup, and could listen to it and could re-listen to it. And he talked about minimum viable product. And I know you worked in software forever and ever. And the thing that sticks with me, he says so many people built great products that nobody ever bought, and we spend all kinds of time and money and resource. And so we're in that position. So is the time and the money and the resource that we're sending, is it the minimum viable product? Is it the most simple thing we can do? And we can build on that. The other thing it makes me think of, Linda, do you remember when we did, we went on, it was out somewhere in the hills for a retreat. And remember we went skeet shooting?
Yes.
And they had really good, simple
Mhm.
training. And I never had done skeet shooting, and the guy was great. Like, his communication was super clear, and there was also a piece of paper that had all the steps. And do you remember? I like I can't hit anything, and I realized it's like things are not lined up right.
Mhm.
And I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant. And so I figured out, I don't know why I didn't think about shutting my left eye and opening the right one, but instead I moved it to my left shoulder, and things lined up and I was able to shoot. But it was something that simple that I didn't have the communication about that made all the difference. And so that's the other thing, is like, what's simple for you might not be very simple for me,
Right.
or vice versa. Like, I want to use a lot of words, and I'd rather do it in person and walk and talk it through. And that is not how you'd like to do it, right? You'd like to have a quiet spot, very linear, think it through before you ever talk to anybody about it. Am I right?
Very true. Yeah. I'm definitely an internal processor, and you're an
Yeah,
external.
I'm external. Yeah.
I also, don't you think too, that's where the value of having the outside perspective from a coach, from a,
Yes.
that's so powerful, because I, our dear friend and mentor, and we miss her so much, Nancy, she would get so frustrated because she would tell me, she said, I told them that 3 years ago.
Oh.
And then they walked into a meeting and they're like, guess what I just figured out?
Oh, you.
It drove her crazy.
Yeah.
It's how people hear it, and also how people communicate it. And that's the value of having someone with that outside perspective. I had the same takeaway from the skeet shooting, is, and I've been taught how to shoot my whole life, and no one ever mentioned, hey, figure out which is your dominant eye, and that's going to make a big difference on whether you hit or miss.
Well, yeah, I mean, I couldn't hit anything, but because I couldn't quite get it lined up. You know what? You made me just think of too. Remember the CEO meeting, and I'm like, "Hey guys, you ought to see this this planner." And I had it, and was flipping through it. And Linda, I told y'all about that 6 months ago. I'm sorry.
Learning a way that worked, and so
Yeah.
it was the same message.
Yes.
Prioritize, spend time planning out your week. Don't let it fill up. But you heard it in a way that worked for you. And so,
Yes.
as managers, leaders, if one topic, if we say it over and over, we find different ways to say it so it resonates with every person, whether it's client, team members, whatever it is. That's so powerful, because that
It is.
one thing is really important, and everyone hears it and they finally understand it and they get their aha. Awesome.
How do you notice? How do you tune in? Because I think a lot of times, and I'm way on this kick, and we're in this virtual environment anyway, but so many times people want to say, well, I sent them an email, I told them, we have a documented process. I mean, like, I've said all those things that I thought, man, I absolutely, how much more simple can it be? I told them, blah, blah, blah. But if they didn't get it,
Right.
as the leader, part of that's on you. So what do you do? How do you know that you've communicated and that they got it? Like, when do you see the light bulb? How do you see that?
Um, that's a great question. And I heard something that stuck with me at the EOS Recharge conference last week. And someone described, the concept of being shared by all. So
Oh,
often we share with. And so
oh,
we assume that shared with is the same as shared by, and it's
mm-mm,
totally different.
mm-mm.
And you can usually tell, for me, my hope, and I love giving open space, just dead silence, so that people can
Yeah,
ask questions. And until you get, hopefully, your team, but until you get some type of engagement from them, whether it's a physical nod, a question about it,
mm-hmm.
um, yes, I get it, I'm in. until you get some type of response that you would expect from that person that you should hopefully know well enough on your team, you you need to wait and you need to try it again, or you need
Yes.
to ask questions. And I think for us, especially as leaders, when we communicate, people tend to, okay, let me just sit with that. Or I don't understand what they're saying, but I'm not going to raise my hand because I
I
don't
want to look
want you
stupid.
to,
Hmm.
yeah. And so asking a question, I think, is so important to each member. How would you, so this is what I just told you. I just told you that the golf swing is really important, that you don't sway back and forth. Beth, tell me how you would explain making sure that you have a good golf swing.
Well, if I don't sway back and forth, I guess I'm thinking if I'm swaying, I'm like moving my whole body.
Okay.
So I don't want to do that. Is that
Right.
what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think just those basic questions. Now, granted, I haven't mastered not moving my whole body.
Well, I don't even know how to golf, so you're way ahead of me. Well, you know what I love about that? Because I think that the significant difference there, and I think it's worth pointing out, is you didn't say, now, Beth, did you get it? Did you know what I'm saying? Well, I'm going to say, oh, yeah, 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 sure. What you said is, how did you hear that? How would that, if you were not to sway, what does that, what does that mean to you, Beth? And so now I've given you some information because if I had thought that just meant swaying my arms or whatever, that's not exactly what you meant. I think you meant my body, right? Because that's the image I got. I see everything in pictures anyway, and so when you said sway, I got the image of that.
Exactly. And you're right. If you don't say, "Did you get it?" Basically, what you're questioning is someone's ability to learn.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say, "No, I didn't understand what you're
Hmm.
saying." But if I ask you to interpret what you heard,
Yes. Yes.
that's a much different.
Ye-
Now, I'm also building that. I want to hear how you interpret it because
Yes.
you may have interpreted it and communicated better than I ever could when I'm trying to explain a
Yeah.
goal.
Oh, yeah. So you'll learn. You'll learn something another way to help another person. That's great. That's great. Well, I think it's easy. I think in our jobs, in our roles, things seem simple to us because we know them
Right.
and we've done them and we're accustomed to them. But a new person, especially like a first time team member, which is a lot of what our customers work with, are first time team members, it is all new to
Right.
them. I mean, it just is. And I think we make assumptions and we get frustrated. And to me, thinking about it in terms of being curious or uh, what did you get out of that, like it's an internal teacher, and so simply sending them an email or giving them a worksheet or a written example of here's what to go do, or even a video or even an online course, like it takes all of it.
Yeah. And that's all great foundational learning. But right now, all you've done is share it with them. And
Not, yeah,
now you need to know, do they really get it? And the only way you know that is if they can communicate it back to you in their own way.
yeah, that's good.
And so, and I think too, that interest builds trust. I mean, it develops this trusting
Yeah.
relationship. And it doesn't have to be this deep kumbaya relationship with every single team member. But those team members have to trust that if you tell me something one time, you're going to be consistent and tell me the same thing. It might be a slightly different way because I want you to understand it, but you're going to continue to repeat the same things and you're going to be consistent. And that establishes just a great starting relationship with trust. And if I show interest in you both personally, I mean, ideally, everyone is asking for to see the human side of their team. And
Yeah.
if they don't care at all about that, there's a great book that I'm listening to, Radical Candor.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you don't show that you care, you can't have great conversations. And
You can't so
so I think that just that initial repetitive, I'm going to tell you these things, but then I want to know, did you really learn it?
that's
And
great.
learn it. Let me see if I can help you understand it a different way. That's a great foundation for a trusting relationship, which is key to business too. I mean, that's how our teams continue to grow and develop and our culture thrives.
Well, and they got to understand that you trust them to do what you've asked them to do, and that you have enough trust that if they goof it up because they're new or even because they're experienced, that you can trust them to get it right at some point too. You make a great point, and I won't keep you all afternoon because I could. Me and you, we could go have a happy hour afterwards if you want. Um,
Last time.
yeah, I think we did happy hour last time, which is when Candy said you can't do Think Tank Thursday at a Mexican restaurant. I think that was the last time we did it last fall. So,
But it was really fun.
well, it was fun. I think it was really hard for other people to hear. So, um, you 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 stated to me that with the stress of the pandemic, and I think you make a great point about how polarized we are from a political point of view. I hope that's the only polarization that we've got, because my gosh, it's awful. And that trust and all those things can be tough. And we're not, like you said, we're not seeing each other at the water cooler. I know this is for our company and for you. We all work pretty independently. For lots of folks, they do not.
Right.
And just even trusting. I know in our sales coaching, we oftentimes have trouble with an operator who is having a hard time trusting that their outside salesperson is doing the work because they're outside. They're
Right.
not inside. That's why they hired them. And so so now it's like, oh my gosh, a whole bunch of people are at home. And there are all kinds of things to, but we had an interesting conversation at our CEO meeting about they were picking their kids up. They were in the car. Well, yeah, they got kids to pick up. So what are you noticing with the folks you're working with, and what do we need to do?
I think obviously there's certain roles that you have a set designated hours. If you are responsible for answering the phone between 8 and 5 and you have set lunch breaks, you need to be available to answer the phone from 8 to 5 and meet company standards. And if you can't do that while you're driving in traffic and on the freeway, that's probably not a good thing to be doing during those hours.
Right.
At the same time, I do think we have to, and I don't think there's a level of distrust that around how people are performing if there's a great relationship there already. So
Yeah.
already
So we're
have,
back to communication and simplification.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that's such a big driving factor. The other thing too that I think is what you see is more and more people with them connecting virtually, whether it's through social media or this way, the things that we connect on, like when we're in person. So you and I could share a margarita and have a great talk about, our husbands are driving us
Anything.
crazy or
Yeah.
beautiful weather this past weekend. And we just have that human connection. And you miss out on that, which may abate when we're just sitting right here and we get right down to the transactional.
Oh yeah.
That might dive right into something very polarizing or that puts me off guard. And we're missing out on that. And so taking the opportunity, whether it's on a phone call, to ask a few more questions. Are you working from home? Are the dogs driving you crazy? Did they bark in the middle of your webinar? Whatever it is, just to reconnect and focus on those pieces that we don't naturally do virtually, that we
Yeah.
do very well when we're in person.
That's great. That's a great point. My company's virtual, and when the pandemic began, we started having Thursday afternoon happy hour. And in 15 years, we had never done anything like that. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. Because we didn't have those kind of friend moments, except for those of us that might go to a big show and things like that. And we're not having any of those either. So we're completely missing out. Well, this has been great, Linda. I never finish a think tank without asking our major think tank question. So I'll have you finish us with this. We're obsessed with growing people. We think that if you grow people, that helps everybody. That helps businesses, communities, everything. And so, to that end, what do you do on a consistent basis, Linda, to help yourself and even others grow?
I have really over the last 4 months been very diligent about making sure that I read something that fulfills me
Yeah.
and challenges me.
Oh,
So I have really focused the last quarter and a half on making sure that I read for 30 minutes a day. And I try to read one book every other week.
oh,
It turns me off a little when I read the description so that it makes me think a little bit more and from a different perspective.
oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Linda, thank you so much for jumping into the tank with us here at Trainertainment. You can bet you're coming back.
I'm looking
I,
forward.
I think it took a whole year to get you back, and
I,
yeah, that was silly.
I think it was Candy's decision because she didn't want any more margaritas.
Exactly. Oh, that was it. We had to get a better routine in. You were one of the originals. So thank you, Linda. I love you and I appreciate you jumping in the tank.
Love you too, and best of luck to you and to all the people that are listening now.
That's great. All right.